Hello yogis, welcome to today's practice, Yin Yoga for Fall. In this practice, props are optional, so if you have blocks, a bolster, pillows, or blankets, and you like to use them for your Yin Yoga practice, you are welcome to grab them. And we'll start off today's practice in a child's pose. So this can be a supported child's pose if you prefer. Especially if your seat doesn't quite reach your heels, it's nice to place a block or a blanket or a pillow underneath your seat. And I like to take a nice wide leg child's pose in Yin Yoga. Maybe you take your knees as far as the yoga mat, or maybe you keep them in more. Play around with it to find your comfort level. You want to feel some sensation, but you don't want it to be painful. Another great option, if your forehead doesn't quite reach the mat, is to take a block for underneath your forehead. So go ahead, get settled in, and we'll be here for about 3 minutes. Inhale in. And exhale, start to press back upright. Next, we'll come into Sphinx pose. So if you're on a hard surface floor, it might be nice to place a blanket for you to lay on. And then come onto your belly. Start by taking your legs out long and your arms out long in front of you. And right here, with your arms out in front of you, might be enough of a bend in your back, especially if you have some back pain. So it's okay if you're just here. But if you want, you can start taking your elbows back until your elbows are underneath your shoulders. And you can also be anywhere between your arms all the way out and your arms up. Press into your knuckles, your hands, and your forearms. Open up through your collarbones And find a nice gaze between your hands. Press into the tops of your feet. And maybe try tucking your tailbone under a little bit if you feel like there's too much of a curve in your low back. And we'll be here for a couple minutes, but if at any time any limb starts feeling tingly or really painful, just go ahead and come out of the pose. Inhale. And exhale, take your elbows out to the side and bring your head to your hands or to the mat. Shake your hips from side to side to release the back. Press up to hands and knees. And if you're on a hard surface, maybe slide your blanket so it's underneath your knees. Then we'll come into heart to earth pose. So start to walk your knees back and take your hands to the upper corners of your mat. Start to shift your hips backwards and bring your heart to the earth. This is another pose where if you start to feel pain or tingling, come up out of the pose. This can be really intense on the shoulders. Inhale. And exhale, press back up, coming back to tabletop. And maybe take a couple of cat-cows here. And then sit back in your child's pose for a few breaths, just as a counter pose to our last couple. Inhale in, and exhale, press back upright. And from here, we'll come into a low lunge or dragon pose. So take your right leg between your hands. Maybe you take some blocks by your feet. This is another one that can feel pretty intense. And so I like to focus on my breathing, just one breath in and one breath out at a time. You want to be feeling some sensation, but not too much. So if you find that you're having trouble staying still, maybe you're too deep into the pose, and it would help to just back out of it a little. Release back to your tabletop and take your left leg between your hands, setting up a low lunge or dragon pose on the left side. Gently release back to your tabletop. Maybe take another cat-cow. Then make your way to a seat and come into butterfly. You might take blankets to support underneath the knees. Bring the soles of your feet together and maybe slide them away from your body. We'll be folding forward over our legs. So inhale in and then exhale, folding forward. Release through your head and your neck. Take a nice deep breath in and exhale. Roll back upright and gently bring your knees back together. Next, take your legs out wide. Maybe sit up on a blanket here. And we'll come into a wide leg forward fold. So maybe you want some blocks here to help support your head, or maybe a pile of blankets and pillows if you'd like it to be more restorative. And start to fold forward. And your head can come to blocks. Or you can just do the pose without blocks if you prefer. Inhale in. And exhale, slowly start to roll back upright. And bring your legs back together. Make your way onto your back. And maybe take your knees into your chest to start. Rock side to side. And then take your hands to your knees and then circle your knees in one way. And then the other. And then release your knees. And we'll come into banana pose. So start by taking your legs out long. Shift your hips over to the right. And take your shoulders and your feet over to the left. Maybe you take your arms up overhead. Grab your right wrist and cross your right ankle over your left. And it might take some situating to get into the pose. If anything, you want to feel a slight stretch on the right side body. You don't want it to be a super intense stretch. So if anything, maybe back off the pose a little. And release your hands. Move your hips and your legs back to center as well as your shoulder. Now take your hips a little bit over to the left, your heels and your shoulders over to the right. Maybe take your arms up overhead and grab your left wrist. Then you can also cross your left ankle over your right. But if that's too intense, you can always just keep your feet uncrossed. And release your hands. Make your way back to center and set yourself up for Shavasana. So this might just be with your legs out long, hands, palms face up by your side. Maybe you cover up with a blanket. Maybe you take a blanket underneath your head and your neck, or rolled up underneath your knees for extra support. If having your legs out long is painful on your low back, you can keep your feet flat on the floor with your knees bent and knees turned inwards towards each other. And once you're settled, you can close your eyes, and I'll cue you again when it's time to move again. take a nice deep breath in and exhale out. Start to move your body, moving your arms and your legs, your fingers, and your toes. And then roll to one side and stay here for a couple breaths. When you're ready, gently press up to your seat. Take a nice deep breath in. And exhale, blink your eyes open. Thank you for sharing this yin yoga practice with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.